Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Dr. Anna Pushkin-Shevlin, Regional Director for Growing Climate Solutions, who will moderate today's Urban Land Institute Resilient Rebuilding panel discussion.
Hello, everyone.
You're working.
I hope that you enjoyed that lunch. And I'll tell you that we picked quiet food so that you could hear us over the lunch. So you can go ahead and enjoy your veggie lunch. And I'm really excited to be here with you. I hope you're having a great day. So Hurricane Ian was among one of the most costly disasters in recent history. $67 billion of privately insured damages across 5 states. In fact, the number of billion-dollar hurricane events has nearly doubled since the 1980s. But what's more astonishing is that the amount of damage has increased 11-fold in the same time. Earlier today, when Mike spoke, we discussed the ways in which reducing greenhouse gases could, over time, reduce the severity and frequency of these storms. But if we're really going to get to the destructiveness of reducing the value of the damage, then we really have to look at the way our built environment is constructed and the way we use our land. That's the only way, because as they say in the hurricane world, hurricanes are natural, but they become disasters when people get in the way. So for this luncheon, we're going to talk about the challenges of revising and rebuilding stronger and more resilient, and the opportunity that we have now after Hurricane Ian. We want to protect ourselves from storm surge, flooding, precipitation, winds, even tornadoes, right? We can create a more resilient built environment, but to address these issues and the secondary ones like heat, when there's no air conditioning after a storm, we have to build better, stronger, but at the same time more energy efficient and affordable. Today, we have a panel of experts from the real estate industry. We want to thank the Urban Land Institute, the voice of the real estate community, helping us put these esteemed people together. So I want to introduce, we have to my left. Tyler Paddock from Parker Mudgett Smith Architects. He's also on the board of directors of the Florida Southwest American Institute of Architects. Next to him is Nick Kulaharis from CGU Homes, one of our builders. We have Dr. Jennifer Langwell from Trifecta Construction, representing Babcock Ranch. And on the end is Mitchell Austin, the senior planner, a principal planner for the city of Punta Gorda. So let's welcome them with a warm round of applause.
Hey.
So I'll start first by saying that most of us have seen pictures, and we saw plenty this morning, of what Hurricane Ian did. But we have Tyler, who volunteered with the FEMA crew as a first responder in assessing the damage. And he would like to share with us some objective analysis of what made it, what was damaged, how much of it was water, how much was wind, how much was both, right? And how do the building codes actually perform when we have a storm of this magnitude? So Tyler, let me start with you.
Okay, thank you very much. Some basics. FEMA establishes the base flood elevation, the BFE. They also determine the flood zones, the velocity zones. The building codes are different, and they deal with the built environment. They're state codes, but each municipality or entity, political entity, can add to them and add to those requirements. But we also need to remember that building codes are minimum standards. It doesn't guarantee anything, it's just a minimum standard. And if we have found, and you'll see in some photos that we've got here, those structures that were built above code are the ones that really survive the best and are in a position to rebuild. Can we do start the slideshow thing here? Okay, here we go. Again, like Anna said, this is all on Fort Myers Beach. This is a video, I'm hoping it works. Fort Myers Beach has one main road to it on the north end, and it's an elevated road that goes through the mangroves. And this is what you see, this is what we saw on the way in to Fort Myers Beach. This is only a few seconds long, but those are all the mangroves. That's what we kind of did to prepare ourselves for going onto the beach itself. And there we go. Okay. The island had 8 feet of water, up to 15 in some spots. You'll see that the surge line there, about halfway above the window in that particular case. What the FEMA evaluation is basically a traffic light survey, a green, yellow, red survey. Again, the major storm damage, we finally got hit with the surge we've all been talking about and hearing about and being warned about for years and years and years. Green meant safe to enter. This is safe to enter, obviously. Safe to enter as well, even though the basement was flooded. For some reason, this homeowner decided to build a basement. Green, again, safe to enter. The structure was sound. Most of the inside was destroyed, but it was sound inside. Green, safe to enter. Again, these are homes. These are all safe to enter, the library. The next is a yellow. That's a restricted use, partial collapse in this case. The rest of the house was fine, but that was not. Again, partial collapse. Yellow, yellow. Yellow falling hazards are yellow designation as well, and the scour that we talked about earlier. Yellow, restricted use. And then red was unsafe. Total building collapse, unsafe, or a building collapse, or totally lifted off the building foundation. Unsafe to enter, obviously, or just gone. Lessons learned, what works and what doesn't. Mobile homes don't work. You can write that down. Mobile homes don't work. As I said, mobile homes don't work. Slab on grade doesn't work. Unfortunately, a lot of the original stock, the older stock, is the same. It doesn't work. Slab on grade doesn't work. Wood piles can work, but they typically don't because they're not engineered that way. They don't work. They may not have sufficient shear strength either. They just snap. Properly designed concrete foundations, concrete piles do work because they have footings and they have foundations and they have engineering involved with them. They work. Properly designed concrete masonry structures work. And even if the gingerbread that's stuck around the columns is destroyed, as it is in the right-hand side here, the columns themselves work. Breakaway walls also work. They can even be reinforced concrete and still be, CMU walls, concrete block walls, and still work. We know how to do that. I just wanted to make sure that everybody had seen those things. Having said that, the impact was less on the more completely engineered and built buildings. And that typically translated to the higher buildings, the condos and the big expensive houses. Again, even they had some damage to them. The storm surge was bad, of course, and the wind above that, and you can actually see where it changed. But everybody received some damage because, after all, this was a 100-year storm. But because it was a 100-year storm, the older building stock and, of course, the mobile homes had no chance.
So you would say that the current Florida building code that was put in place in like 2004, it worked.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. The current codes work to a point. Again, they're minimum standards, and they did in this case they worked. When you build at 13 feet and 99 years worth of storms go to 10, then you're fine. But they do work.
So there was an observation that Punta Gorda didn't sustain as much damage as we would have thought, in part because Hurricane Charlie in 2004 may have destroyed some of the older on-slab inventory. So I guess, Mitchell, can you corroborate what your observations were in Punta Gorda and whether codes are good enough?
Yeah, so our experience in Punta Gorda, we had Hurricane Charlie blow through in August of 2004. That storm was very small, wind-driven event, moving very rapidly. So that storm devastated Punta Gorda. We had significant building loss. Pretty much every structure in the community received some level of damage. Even if it wasn't structurally damaged itself, it received damage from like roofs flying off of other buildings and other structural elements in the environment impacting them. A lot of vegetation loss, etc. In the intervening years, everything that was built back was, of course, built back to the current codes at that time. And that inventory did remarkably well with Hurricane Ian. To give you some sense of the difference, like the level of wind that we received in Charlie was measured in minutes. In Ian, it was measured in hours for those hurricane force winds in our community. But the actual experienced level of damage was much lower, much less significant loss of structures and buildings. And one observation that I do want to make in terms of historic building stock, we have some homes in our community that are 100 to 120 years old. Those oldest homes actually did fairly well, both in Hurricane Charlie and in Hurricane Ian. It's really the intervening sort of the middle of the 20th century building stock that did very poorly. So it's not a lost cause for historic resources, but it is something that has to be paid attention to if we want to keep our history and culture intact in our communities.
So it seems from both of you and from other observations that the current building standards work, and they're going to get revised over time and become even better, hopefully. But that leaves a big question. So what happens to the pre-existing inventory? How do we bolster and retrofit the older building stock that doesn't meet code so that they're not whacked the next time? So I'll open that up to all of you. You have Mitchell, and then Jennifer, and then Nick.
So I would say that is probably the biggest challenge we face. Those costs are typically borne by individual property owners. They're very difficult to see the results of in terms of insurance rates, et cetera, but there are programs and systems available to do that, which I'm not as familiar with as some of the other people on this dais.
Jennifer?
So one program I would mention would be Fortified. It's an Insurance Institute program. They are a nonprofit, and the insurance companies pay to have this nonprofit exist. It's all structural engineers. They've identified the weakest points of buildings. If you reinforce those weak points, you will get insurance, and you will get insurance discounts. So it is a certification program. They do have an existing roof program. There's My Safe Florida Home, which will give matching grants for improving your houses. The Florida Green Building Coalition also has an existing home guideline, and it'll step through things like gable end bracing, if you don't have hurricane straps, how you can add those. So there are resources out there that can help homeowners in existing homes fortify their houses.
Nick?
Hi.
How do we upgrade the existing inventory?
So, I think first and foremost, as we go through land planning and land codes, we need to look at redevelopment standards, right? Our most vulnerable areas from storm threat is along the coast. Those are going to be some of the areas that are first to be redeveloped. The newer stock housing inland will be later in years, but the redevelopment of those product will happen first. So let's look at that. I think there's certain things, and a lot of municipalities do this already. We want to incentivize homeowners when they do sustain that damage to not just replace, to hopefully improve. And so, one of the things I hear a lot of is, well, What about the building permit fee? So I know a lot of municipalities are waiving those. Well, how long does it take? I don't want to wait 6 months to go through a review. I'm just going to put the thing back together. So we have to work on items like that. The other thing, when we look at these things, is the FEMA 50% rule. And the hardest thing I see in homeowners, not only on the for-profit side, but also when I was the president of an organization called Habitat for Humanity, you get hit with it on both sides. So here I am, I'm a new homeowner in Southwest Florida, and I want to buy a new home. And I pay a premium for that home, not only because of our beautiful location, but all of the building codes. And then a hurricane rolls through. And then what happens the next year? My premium goes up again. And so I'm almost being double whammied there, especially if you're on the affordable housing spectrum of things. And it really hit hard over the years with the flood insurance. So the FEMA flood insurance, after Hurricane Irma came through, we met with FEMA and some of their directors and their personnel, and they said affordable housing should never pay more than $300 a year for flood insurance. Well, I will tell you, at Habitat for Humanity, I was seeing policies come in for $1,400 or $1,500 annually. And when you deal with that market, dollars truly do count.
So one of the remarkable stories that I read in the paper was about Babcock Ranch. In fact, it got national media attention on how well it did after the storm. Mind you, Babcock Ranch is inland, so it didn't suffer from the storm surge the way our coastal communities did. But they're also built to a set of sustainability principles that are kind of unique. And Jennifer, I was going to ask you, can you talk a bit about how developing sustainably and incorporating those sustainability principles creates the resilience?
So I'll start with one thing. It didn't matter till it mattered, right? No one cared what we were doing out there until this happened. And a lot of people say, we were hit too soon. In a few years, we would have revamped things, and we meaning the region, not Babcock Ranch specifically. But I say, it happened, and now we have a model that shows how it can be done. So I would say first we went back to historic photographs and looked where the natural flowways were and restored those natural flowways. So how water moved on the site, obviously we've learned you can't fight Mother Nature. So we let the water flow how it wanted to flow and developed areas where we weren't impacting those flowways. In addition to that, the stormwater management system has quite a bit of redundancy to it, and that is what guides resilience. So all of the lakes and ponds are interconnected, every one to every other one. So if one area gets blocked, the water can still relieve itself in other areas. We're getting ready to put in a system of pumps so we could pump down lakes in advance of a storm if we needed to. But we ultimately had 14 more inches of capacity in our lakes. If the lakes were to rise, it is designed where the water will flow in between the houses and flood the road intentionally. So your finished floor elevation is 2 feet higher than the roads intentionally so that we can have additional capacity there. We have man-made bioswales and wetlands. We have natural wetlands, and natural wetlands have huge storage capacity. So by building around those things, we let nature really take care of a lot of the stormwater. I would say from an infrastructure standpoint with power, Florida Power and Light is hardening all of their lines, their transmission lines, and we luckily had hardened transmission lines. They go directly to a substation located on site. From there, everything goes underground. So wind would not impact the utilities. The TCU, which is the water utility, is a hardened building. It's higher up. So again, not an issue from a flood standpoint. And we also looked at native vegetation, right? So what was out there clearly has withstood decades, centuries of storms. And so using that plant palette also helped us. Now, the majority of our damage were down trees. So FEMA apparently came, inspected the site, and reported back to their supervisor that the storm missed us. Now, I'm not sure quite. Some people call Babcock Ranch a bubble, but it's a hypothetical bubble. There's not a real bubble out there. They must have come after the trees were stood back up. I would say about 50% of the trees were down because they didn't have a root structure. I mean, literally that day and the day before, trees were being planted. So all in all, we're really right around, for all of the houses and all of the land development, about $500,000 of damage.
Wow.
So, you know, relatively
That's amazing.
speaking to the billions that you've mentioned, you know, that's where we are.
That's incredible. So, so we have these principles of sustainability that we know work. We know the building codes work. But in terms of sustainability, whether it's building to Babcock Ranch standards or LEEDs or Green Globes or FGBC, one of the questions I have, and maybe you in the audience have, is why aren't all communities built that way? Why can't we get the development community just to make that the standard? And the issue that's often raised is that it's expensive, and that impacts affordability. So I'm going to ask the developer and the architects on the team, how much more does it cost, percentage-wise, to build it to those sustainability and resilience standards? Is that, how do we, you know, quantify that? Is it really that much?
Well, I mean, it's a pretty common fact that government mandates and fees make up roughly about 20-25% of the cost of a home, give or take. And so I'm going to answer kind of two sides, one from the for-profit sector and one from the nonprofit sector. Clients either in both of those sides like knowing, at least in my experience, that they have the latest, the greatest. I think it's human nature. I have a home that can withstand this. I have a home that's Energy Star certified. I have a home that does A, B, and C. Now that being said, on the for-profit side, I have a client that is just hell-bent on getting a Tesla roof. And he's going to have one for $800,000. He gets a 30% tax credit. That's about $250, give or take, right? He gets a conventional metal roof would be about $250. So let's take those numbers out. He's spending about $300,000 on this sustainable long-term roof. If his electrical bill is $2,000 a month, anyone do the math? It's going to take him 150 years to pay that off. So step one, I think, with those standards, I think they're amazing, and I think as a global society, we truly have to get there. Energy costs have certainly come down. We've seen what Babcock Ranch has done, and so we need to get there, but we need to be a little bit more, I think, creative about it. From the affordable housing side, when I was with Habitat, we did Energy Star certified program. And that was a program, we actually were mandated to do it because we were receiving HUD funds through a program called SHOP. And that cost was about 5% of our building cost. And then you have to know how to run it, maintain it long term. So, you know, the question is always, if you're, a lot of people say, well, let's just have the government help us out, right? I'm not actually a big believer in that, to be honest with you, but if the government does help out, it's nice. They gave us $10,000 a unit to help bring down and make homes more affordable, but then with that said, oh yeah, you have about 7,500 in mandates we're going to put on for you to get your 10,000.
I can add just a little bit on
Please do.
the putting things on top, right? So at Babcock Ranch, post Ian, I sent structural drawings of a house to Fortified. And I said, tell me what it would take for all of us here to get houses to be fortified so that we're guaranteed insurance and we're guaranteed insurance discounts. There were 3 comments, and they were things like change to ring shank nails versus regular nails. So the cost to get to these standards, because we're in such a high wind load, is minimal. Now, of course, buying more efficient equipment, that does have a cost to it. But we have found that with small changes, field changes, and best management practices, you can get 90-95% there.
You can get you can get some good savings by those strategies, but there's definitely an increased first cost. And again, it's how much above the codes do you want to go? I don't think just stronger codes is the answer. I think there has to be an incentive component to that too, like you were suggesting, which I think is a great idea, because you can't just mandate that. And because again, whatever you mandate, you can't go high enough. It's kind of like how much insurance is enough, you know, or you know, you have to set your standard, your minimum standards, like the codes do, and like you said, first costs increase when you do more stuff. I mean, that's pretty obvious, and you can get those kind of incentives with lower insurance rates and lower operating costs and that kind of thing. So that helps play it out too. We've found that our public clients that are more interested in the longevity of the project, of the building, they're planning on holding on to it for 50 years or 75 years or something like that. They're more apt to accept those front costs because their ROI is so much further out. We're found in the same thing with owner-occupied rental units, because they're living there. They own the property and they don't intend to flip it right away and move on. So they're more willing to accept those first costs. Commercial has to do with more, if you're the tenant, the emphasis isn't so much on the building, it's to keep your business moving, business continuity. And so they're more worried that the building can withstand whatever it needs to so that they can keep their building operating. And so they're not really interested in first costs or they're not as interested in paying first costs as somebody who would have owned, who owns the building.
Mm-hmm. So essentially what we're seeing is that we have a homeowners market, they're motivated by certain things. Mm-hmm. We have a commercial and a real estate market, both retail and office. Their developers have different priorities and preferences.
Sure.
It varies whether you're a tenant owner or an occupier owner, mm-hmm. and all of these things. So we have to create sort of a custom package depending on which part of the built environment we're dealing with, right?
Yes.
So I guess the question I have is, how do we motivate the development community to go above and beyond, and how do we convince the public to either accept those costs in return for their return on investment? Do we use carrots, like incentives? Some of them are like, we'll fast permit you. Or do we use sticks like, well, you must, and if not, we don't give you a CO. So what do you think are better, the carrots or the sticks?
I think you need a little of both, but just to jump in here, I think you need a little of both. I think the carrots are just as important. And the other big issue that is helping this whole conversation is the hurricane that we just went through. I mean, that says a lot without saying anything.
Jennifer, you had?
I agree. We need both carrots and sticks. So on the East Coast, South Florida, a lot of the municipalities require green building certification. So if you're over, in some places it's mm-hmm. 7,500 square feet up to 50,000 square feet. If you don't certify, you pay a 4% construction bond. And 4% of $60 million buildings is a hefty price. And so there's incentive via stick over there. When we look at all of the things that we have historically, I'll call it a buffet, right? There's a buffet of sustainability, a buffet of resilience. And the developers that I have worked with in the past are like my 9-year-old. And they're like, mac and cheese. I'm only having the mac and cheese. And why Babcock worked was because we took a little of everything on the buffet. And we saw what worked and what didn't work, and we pivoted where we needed to, and we've now been challenged to what if? What if it was worse? What if we had more rain? What if we had more wind? And in our instance, Evergreen is our funder, and they have environmental sustainability goals. And I've found this with Prudential, I've found this with JP Morgan, I found this with Barings. Every project now, I'm being asked, how is your development or your building going to help me achieve my environmental sustainability goals, because I owe this to my shareholders. So we're starting to see money drive this as well.
So ESG is at work.
And just very quickly, I would agree with Jennifer on both fronts. Number one, I do like mac and cheese. And number two, I also believe if you get into certain elements of where we are within codes, I think there's a lot of things where we can really analyze and shave items that maybe aren't as necessary as we once thought they were. And just one quick example is there was a mandate at some point in time, sidewalks on both sides of a street. Right, and it's great. I have young children myself. I love being able to walk and have that sustainability of being out and exercise and do all that stuff. But especially when it comes to affordability standpoint, what would it cost if I only had to put a sidewalk on one side of the street? Well, do I still maintain our goal of having walkable communities? Maybe not as good as two, agreed. And how could I redistribute those funds? So at Habitat for Humanity, I had an example where I had 10 miles of sidewalk. If I only had to put in 5, how could I have redistributed those funds to do other items? You know, maybe more community park space, maybe more water management, stuff like that.
So I'll ask my fellow planner, Mitchell, what's the role of planning, or a planning director, in helping get those standards raised?
So for me, again, carrots and sticks, just to echo everybody else, works. I think for the biggest challenge for a municipality and for Southwest Florida as a region is really understanding which pieces are most effective where. These standards, you know, all the programs that were mentioned, they're really sort of a universal set of standards. And there are pieces in those standards that may not apply to or that apply differently for Fort Myers Beach, which is a beachfront coastal community, versus my community, which is also a coastal community, but it's on Charlotte Harbor and has huge mangrove fringes protecting most of the human infrastructure. So there are different things that may be applicable, and also as a community, the way that we build, where we put stuff, where's the right place for us to live, where's the human environment, and balancing that out with the natural systems like Babcock Ranch has done. It's more challenging. Babcock Ranch started with a clean sheet of paper. In Punta Gorda, we've got 140 years worth of development history. How do we retrofit that 140 years of development to be more resilient and to protect everybody universally, regardless of whether or not the Habitat for Humanity house is, you know, down 3 blocks away from downtown, can afford to actually bring their home up to a higher standard than when it was built 30 years ago.
So
yes, and.
we're going to be wrapping it up. I'm going to give you each a last parting conversation. So we know that there are just some places that are going to be always vulnerable. You just made that point. In terms of not developing along coastlines or not putting our assets on the coast, we don't have that luxury here in Florida. We have coasts on both sides. And that is where our infrastructure is. We don't want to be building on green fields inland. We want to infill and redevelop. But there are certain parcels, which Hurricane Ian showed us, which are going to be vulnerable always. So, and some of those are fallow now, and we have an opportunity to decide what to do. So take a moment. In your professional fantasy, what should our coastline look like? If you thought about what should go there or what shouldn't for the next 20 years, and then eventually when the seas start to rise, you know, surge wiped everything out, but in 10 years, 20 years, the waters are going to rise and the toes of those buildings are going to get wet. What should our future urban landscape look like along the coast? And how do we come together as builders, architects, planners, city people, as a community, and influence to make sure that what gets rebuilt is the right thing? I'll go down the line and we'll wrap it up.
So I would say that that's really the multi-billion-dollar question. And for me, the answer begins with the planning piece. It really starts with the community conversation about what are our priorities, what are our vulnerabilities, really taking a hard look at what we have built, what is important to us, and making a plan of action for the next 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years. If we fail to do that as communities, as individual communities, or as a region, the market will decide for us. These risks are not being reduced any other way than by our collective action. And if we fail to do that, the financial services industries, the banks, the lenders will stop lending in certain areas because they don't feel that those dollars are going to be paid back. The insurers will stop insuring or raise the prices to the moon where no reasonable person would pay them. The market will decide if we fail to plan.
So I'm going to do a little devil's advocate and say, you know, if I own my piece of the pie, the American dream, and that property happens to be on the beach, I don't think you're stopping me from rebuilding. Now, that being said, a lot of people have moved. A lot of people may not rebuild. A lot of people have come in and purchased those properties because people were underinsured. But you can hold people to higher standards. So as you've said, the code is the minimum. And so if we're going to build in vulnerable places, we should be building to handle the vulnerability. So stronger structures, elevated structures, all of those, and that can be required in land development codes. So that's an easy solve.
I think if you had a panel of attorneys sitting up here, it would be answered completely differently. I think it goes back to, you know, we have what we have right now, and if we do want to make significant change, we have to go back and relook at those redevelopment codes, and how do we do things like building more sustainable product, building the stuff so water can move in and out. I think, honestly, that's the only, I shouldn't say the only, that would be my best way to get there, is through the redevelopment code, unless, you know, we just want to wipe everything clean.
I would say we go back to what's known as the smart growth standards. We've been refining them for years and years and years. A lot of you out there work with them often, and I know that's pretty much Mitchell's whole life. So, but it's just basic principles, you know, infill instead of green space. Check the impacts on water and natural resources and habitats. Make sure that your developments are near existing transportation and utilities and those sorts of things, and that the design, or at whatever level, is appropriate for that particular location. And then, of course, we need to make a special effort to address the older neighborhoods, the existing stock, to help them become as resistant as possible without lifting every house up 12 feet. That is impossible.
So the last word is, we have a room full of people that are very concerned about climate. We're all here today. How do we engage? What should the, and I guess this question goes, I'll let Mitchell have the last word. Hate to put you on the spot there, but we have a room full of engaged constituents. How can they interact with you or with the city and with the elected officials at that city, with the planning department? We have tools like adaptation action areas and new ideas. How do we get the people in this room to engage with our local leaders to make this vision happen? What do you tell these folks to do tomorrow or in the weeks ahead or in the months ahead?
So really, from the standpoint of a concerned resident or an activist, it's engage with the staffs of those cities, whether it's management or planning staff, utilities staff, even city utilities, water and sewer. They're highly concerned about their infrastructure, public works, and most importantly, engage with your elected officials and let them know that you're concerned about this. Because without policy action from those elected officials, nothing's going to change.
Well, I want to thank each of you for taking time and preparing and being here today. Thanks to the ULI for pulling all of you together. Jackie Davis, a shout out to you if you're in the audience. And a shout out to the Collier Community Foundation for sponsoring this panel, this luncheon panel, and part of our lunch. We'll continue with the program. And next, I will ask each of you to take a few minutes. We have a short 15-minute break before we move on to our prioritization, which is the time where all the strategies you discussed before lunch are going to be presented to all of you, and we'll be voting on that. So take 15 minutes to dump your lunch in a trash can. We're going to then resume in about 15 minutes with Hal and Raphael for the prioritization. Make sure you have looked over your codes. We're going to be using a polling tool called Menti. Hal and Raphael will explain that, but let's take a few minutes to break.
I was a little remiss this morning when I mentioned our sponsors this morning. I left a few out, and that was certainly not by design, but I also want to recognize Growing Climate Solutions and Priority Marketing for their support today, especially as the event sponsors. Our media partners, WGCU, the News Press, and the Naples Daily News. And then also our friends with Andy Hill Investments. Andy's here today, and Myra and Van Zant Williams in sponsoring the video today. So thanks to all of those folks. I also, while I have the mic, want to embarrass somebody. Anna Pushkin-Shevlin, who was here earlier on stage, she was moderating that last event there. There's Anna right in the back. Anna has really been the glue that's kept this steering committee together and kept our partners together. We've been planning this event for over the last year now. So how about a warm applause for Anna Pushkin-Shevlin? Thank you, Anna. Now it's time to bring back Hal Beardall and Rafael Montalvo, and they're going to guide us through reviewing and then voting on the prioritized strategies that you all discussed earlier this afternoon. Hal?
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate that. I'm going to work from down here with a hand mic, if you don't mind. This portion of our program, we're going to be doing this fairly quickly. We wanted to give you a chance to hear what other tables talked about. So this next part is part report out of what the other tables that you didn't get to participate on came up with as their key strategies or prioritized strategies. Then we're going to open up using an online tool with your phones. So hopefully you've all got your phones out and charged. If you don't, go ahead and pull your phone out. We're going to use the phones to allow you to sort of add another layer perhaps of, let's call it emphasis. Which of these prioritized strategies that came out of each of the tables would you as a group like to see emphasized? So we're going to have, what we'll do is we'll put each one of these strategies up on the screen one at a time, let you look at them from each topic, and then we'll go back through it slowly one more time so you can kind of pick out the one you would like to emphasize the most. And Raphael, I think we can go to the prioritization slide. Now, when we say this, prioritization has several aspects to it. We're going to ask you to basically pick your own criteria for it. It doesn't matter. This is not a formal survey. It's just sort of a sense of the group as a whole of which of these priorities might be emphasized. Are they emphasized because it makes sense to start with it? Does it make sense it's the most urgent, or it has the biggest impact, or it's most doable, or some combination of those, or some other aspect of priority that you think that one is going to have the most impact? So again, we're going to show you one by one the strategies from each of the tables and each of the topics. You're going to make note of the letter that goes with the one that you would like to emphasize. We're going to then open up the Menti polling for use on your phone, which I'm going to describe how you can do that in just a minute. And then you'll select one, we'll look at those results, then we'll go to the next one. It's a lot of things to go through. We'll try and do this as quickly and efficiently as we can because we're getting close to the end of your day. All right, let's, I think you want to open up the Menti. All right. This is the polling tool we're going to use. You can use that QR code. Note that QR code is on the last page of your program as well. It's the one in the middle of the page with the blue around it. You can use that QR code. That's the easiest way to get in because it'll take you straight to it. You can go in to menti.com and enter this code. But if you use the QR code, it should take you straight to it. And if anybody needs a little help, raise your hand, and please find somebody younger than me to help you figure out how to do that. I know the QRs are pretty common these days, but if any questions about it, somebody else at your table may help you do it, or just give you a second to do that. I'm assuming all these thumbs up are people jumping in, so I know we got more than 62 people in here, so give you a few minutes. Okay. Anybody need any help? We might have some people who can walk around and help you figure that out. Gene, you have? You had a code in this book? Okay.
There, Hal,
Yes.
there's a code at the bottom of a page, of the prioritization page. Do not use that one. Use the larger one up near the center of the page. Or go to menti.com.
We're going to test that in just a minute. That's going to be the first step. We'll do a test question, but I want to be sure everybody's in, and apparently I think some are still having trouble getting in. You should have a page that has a thumbs up. Okay, can you use this one, Gene? I don't know why they're different, Gene. I'm sorry. Yes.
The one in the book asks you if you use the book, it asks you your favorite color and then you get this. If you use that, all you get is a thumbs up.
Okay.
We are told that at this point it will work better if you just use the one on the screen.
Yeah.
Do not use the one in the book, or use menti.com with the code on the screen. Use that,
So
either
use-
of the two things on screen.
Okay. If you don't mind, if you've already gone in that one, if you could go ahead and use the one on the screen, just to be sure we're all in the same place. Well, how about this one? Can you see this one? I'm just going to jump in here. All right, I'm seeing a bunch more come up, so hopefully the number's going back up. Just going to give you another couple minutes here to be sure that the count goes up. We're going to do a test question in just a minute. I'm just giving people an innocuous one just to be sure everybody's... I don't think so yet. I don't think you have to hit the thumbs up yet. Did you hit the thumbs up? Okay, because I don't think he hasn't opened that poll yet. All right, I'm still seeing the number climbing, so if y'all be patient, I appreciate this. Isn't technology wonderful? Yes. It's still climbing, so. Okay, anybody else still need a minute to get in? If you do, raise your hand, I'll give you another minute. I see at least one or two people looking like they're getting help. Appreciate your patience. Okay, let's go ahead if we can. I appreciate your patience. Raphael, I think we want to run the first test question. Okay, you're going to be asked, oh, I'm on the wrong screen. Which dessert would you prefer? Which dessert would you like to emphasize? Chocolate mousse, the lemon meringue pie, or lots and lots of ice cream, whatever that flavor may be? So hit A, B, or C. Everybody have that on their phone where you can hit A, B, or C? Okay. Oh, okay, it is appearing on both sides. All right. Yeah, we're just testing this one. All right, so your answers will come up in this format. So clearly, ice cream nudges out chocolate mousse. We got the chocolate fans and we got the ice cream fans. So this is the kind of result that you'll be seeing on these. And again, one of the things I want to emphasize is that all of the prioritized strategies from each of the tables is going to be incorporated into our report for today's sessions. We're just giving you an opportunity as a group not only to see what the other tables had to say and wanted to prioritize, but give you a chance maybe to add a layer of emphasis on those as well. So with that, Raphael, I think we can go back to the first category we had was adopting cleaner energy.
Okay, Hal,
Yes?
fair warning. The first strategy for this group got much longer and is on 2 slides.
Okay. Okay. All right. Their first one is legislation and policy. Make a statewide commitment to reach net zero GHG emissions by 2050 or sooner. Include automobile and truck emission standards, additional investments in clean energy and EV infrastructure, renewable energy portfolio standards, and requirements for utilities. Oh, it did get longer. Economic incentives to business and residents. I'm going to kind of paraphrase some of these so you don't have to listen to me read them all. Reframing the issues in economic terms, legalize power purchase agreements and community solar, require or incentivize increased energy efficiency in new buildings, redirect weatherization program funding to low-income families, incent or require greater energy efficiency, design communities for cyclists, pedestrian safety, etc. Okay? What's the next one, Raphael? B, promote distributed solar, including net metering legislation to ensure positive crediting systems for rooftop solar, power purchase agreements, develop microgrids with solar and battery storage, community-based energy solutions to help reach poorer communities. C, promote the availability of clean public transportation energy efficiency in municipal and county operations, renewable energy and energy efficiency, invest in public transportation systems, invest in EV infrastructure to support EV adoption, mobile power kiosks powered by renewables for emergency services, replace municipal county vehicles with EVs, replace school and public transportation with electric buses, use biogases. Is there another one? All right, and D, community education outreach to schools, churches, families, etc., to help create goals for the communities to build bottom-up changes.
It's the last one.
Last one.
That is the last
Oh, that is the last one. All right. We're going to go back. I'll let Raphael go back and show each of these to you one by one. Pick the letter that you would like as a group to emphasize. Again, all these priorities will be moved forward, but just perhaps a chance for you to look at these and add your sense of an emphasis of which one you would want to emphasize most. I don't think all of them are quite this full. Okay. Is everyone ready to vote? If so, let's open the poll. We should get up somewhere around 130, a little over 130 total. It says it's closed.
Try it again.
You refreshed and it worked? Okay. Okay, hang on. Keep it open a little bit because I think we have some people having to refresh the phone to make it work. Okay, we may have a few more here. We're still short of our test total. You please, any additional direction from somebody younger than me would be appreciated.
Raise your hand if you are not on Wi-Fi at the moment. Okay. If you are not, we'll take a minute for everyone to get onto the Wi-Fi. I think that will help with some of the voting issues. So if you go to your Wi-Fi settings and select Innovation Guest. Once you're there, you'll go to password, and it is all one word, capital A for auto, capital C for cart, auto cart. Do not ask me why that is the password. Auto cart, capital A, capital C.
All one word.
All one word. Auto cart, capital A, capital C, all one word. And if you have any issues, please raise your hand. Some of my team members will be coming around to support.
I think he does. I think he's having a hard time getting in. Appreciate your patience. Well, we got up to 134 votes, so we're close. It's those ice cream people? Is that what you're blaming? You must not have been one of the ice cream people. Okay, I think we got one more. I want to give him a chance. Okay, if I could, I'm going to go ahead and move forward because we've got several more to go. And clearly in this one, the option A, or the A had by far the highest. The others were fairly even. Again, they'll all be emphasized, but that one in particular might belong right there as A as the first one. Raphael, just for time-wise, I'm going to suggest if we could go to the next topic. Addressing agricultural needs and biodiversity. Okay, A is support government initiatives that acknowledge and quantify environmental services provided by agriculture and compensate agriculture for those services. Embracing science and basing decisions off the economics balance between food production and environmental protection. Incorporate a regional approach to management to decrease the ripple effect of harmful practices. Okay. B, provide incentives to support agricultural activities that can help mitigate climate change impacts, including water, farming, and carbon sequestration. Different, smarter technologies that minimize unnecessary waste. C, invite agriculture to the table to understand how climate change manifests for them and work with them to address it. Create a conversation about incentives for clean farming. And D, addressing water quality will allow more energy and resources to be put into mitigating damage already done. One way to do this is develop a baseline.
Hal,
Yes.
before we go back through these again, we've been requested to put the code back up on, or the QR code back up on the screen.
Okay.
So we're going to do that.
All right. If you need the QR code, because you've now gone on to the Wi-Fi. Okay, we're getting certain a higher number now. Okay, anybody else need a minute to get on? All right, let me go back through, we'll just show them to you again. Remember, note the letter of the one you would like to most emphasize. A. Okay, and there's B. C. And D. Okay, we ready to vote? All right, let's prepare to vote, and all right, so the poll is open. It's like a horse race. B jumps out to an early lead. I think we're closer to a 150 total now. Anybody need another minute? I think I heard a yes. Okay. Let's go ahead and close that poll and note that clearly 63, B had by far the most, but the others still had a lot of support. So again, we'll include them all. It's just interesting to know which of these is sort of an extra emphasis of the larger group. So let's go ahead and move to the next category of human health risks of changing climate. Human health risks include A, create a state, regional, or local climate action plan. B, create a heat action plan. C, incentives promoting rapid electric vehicle adoption, active transportation, and zero emissions public transportation infrastructure and ridership. D, legislate mandatory air conditioning in all rental and public housing and incentivize the installation of energy efficient, climate friendly AC heat pumps. E, counter money behind that causes climate change. Okay? And G, establishing a regional, statewide climate action think tank to inform climate action plans and lead implementation, consisting of legislators, energy experts, environmental and health experts, and community-based organizations. Okay, I think, oh, one more, F, kind of out of order a little bit. F, focus on water impacts on health, including red tide, etc. It should be H. Hopefully it'll come up on the poll that way. All right, A and B. Okay, G, and I think we're going to have one more. Okay. All right. We're ready to poll. You picked a letter. All right. You already jumped in. I think you have to hit the refresh, apparently. I think it may be overwhelming with this many. Okay, still have a few to go. Let me leave it open for a little bit longer.
So if apologies, the poll was closed at the beginning. If you refresh, you should be able to get your vote in now. Sort of the vote early, vote often, and it'll get there.
And again, it's just an opportunity for you to sort of emphasize one of them. All of them we want to recognize as being vital to your group. Well, I'm sort of pausing at the end and letting you see which one got the most votes. I'm hoping you remember your own letter that, okay. Anybody else? I think it still gives us even an indication here that clearly G was a bigger emphasis than the others, and the others all had support sort of almost evenly across there. Okay, I'm going to keep you moving, so I'll move you on to the next topic, which is climate education and awareness. Okay, A is design and implement curricula about climate change early in K-12 to increase knowledge of climate change and acknowledge how cultural ideology plays a role in perception and learning. B, develop materials and curricula suitable for use by community-based organizations, including, and I'll just let you see the list of possible organizations. I'm going to go to C. C is develop coordinated public messaging that provides information in bite-size, easily digestible increments, regularly provides information through multiple high visible channels, including billboards, social media, broadcasting, etc., documents and uses local examples of climate change related impacts, such as nuisance flooding, heat records, etc. D, develop climate education partnerships and coalitions with and within community-based organizations, business, faith, local governments, public, private, organizations already active in climate change education. Okay, so there's A again. Make a note of which letter you want to emphasize. B, C, or D. Okay, we ready? Open that poll. I don't know if it's my imagination or not, but as D goes forward, it seems like I have this vague memory of a lot of the ones you're emphasizing are the ones that involve working together collaboratively as groups. Okay, any others? All right, we can close that poll, and obviously D was the most, with the greatest emphasis. The others all had a high degree of support as well, which is interesting. All right, improving the resilience of our coastal interface. A is implement nature-based solutions to improve shoreline protection, mangroves planting, living shorelines, other green and hybrid shoreline protection, living seawalls, reinforced sand dunes. B, restore, conserve, enhance coastal habitats, land conservation and acquisition, options that allow for building up land accretion, thin layer replacement, exotic species removal, flora and fauna, prescribed fire application on private lands. C, revise local and state policy to promote green infrastructure. It includes reduce or waive permitting costs for natural infrastructure restoration, etc. Limit hardened infrastructure to particular locations. Limit zones of development. Integrate tidal prisms into development requirements to reduce needs for restoration, and establishing rolling easements to allow coastal habitats to migrate. D, innovate innovative financing opportunities, including blue carbon credits and insurance for natural capital. E, assessment of vulnerabilities of coastal interface. F, consensus building on policy. G, well, consensus building on policy. All right, go back through them one more time and you'll pick the letter that you want to emphasize. Or I should say the strategy you would like to emphasize. Note the letter. All right, we ready? Go ahead and open that poll. Okay, maybe have a few more votes to come in. It looks clearly like A and C are by far the most popular in terms of which ones to emphasize. Okay? All right, I know we're pushing on our time, so we want to go ahead and go to the next one. Green business. We have A is encourage commercial property owners to invest in solar power. B, less government involvement. C, incentivize businesses for EV charging stations and solar. Are there others?
This was a succinct group.
Yes. So, pick one of those that you think need to be emphasized. A little closer on this one. That's why I'm up here and not where you are. All right, let's go ahead and close that poll. Clear, wow, A and C almost exactly tied in terms of emphasis. All right, using green infrastructure to increase resilience and mitigate impacts. Strategy A, develop a community participatory process in consultation with local government to introduce green infrastructure concepts and projects to the community, allowing them to gain acceptance. B, revise landscaping ordinances to discourage the use of sod grass and codify alternative landscape designs and better protect the tree canopy. Use public spaces such as parks and medians as examples of appropriate eco-regional landscaping. C, offer training on the engineering of natural systems to staff in local jurisdictions so they can feel more comfortable, including the requirements and RFPs for work and approvals of permits. D, jurisdictions taking the lead and making green infrastructure part of their strategic planning. Invest in subject matter experts to advise on green infrastructure.
And that's it.
And that's it. So go back through one more time. Pick the letter that you want to emphasize or the strategy you want to, the letter for the strategy you want to emphasize. Okay? B. And C. And then let's open that poll. Okay, maybe a few more, or maybe that's about it. Yep, there we go. All right, well, look, clearly B has the most support, but both A and D have significant support as well. Okay, promoting smart development that minimizes future climate risk. A, local governments need to update and enforce the smart growth elements in their comprehensive plans and land development codes, tree planting, I assume that's tree planting, and expanding native planting was emphasized. B is promoting solar rooftops. Local governments should increase water quality and water monitoring. And we have double letters there.
First one is C.
The first one should be C. Make note of that. D is multimodal transportation with emphasis on codifying complete streets. Okay, go back through them one more time. And note that first one is a C. Local governments is the C. Okay. Open the poll. Okay, clearly people would like to see A of these emphasized. We have a final few polls. Okay, if not, we'll close that one. Improving the resilience of our water management infrastructure. A is revise land development codes to promote water efficiency, require or incentivize increased water efficiency in new buildings, encourage planting and nurturing of native trees and native plants to reduce heat island effects and reduce water use irrigation needs. B, revise land use plans, development codes also to include stormwater management, update land use plans and land development codes to promote adaptation and resilience in stormwater requirements, reduce parking ratios and mandate permeable pavement. C, make green infrastructure a focus of effective municipal, regional, and state investment. Invest in land acquisition to increase mitigation capacity, provide guidance for the application of green infrastructure and living shoreline approaches. D, education and continuous communication. Okay, go back through and note the letter that corresponds with the strategy you would like to see emphasized. Okay, D. And then we can open that poll. All right. Looks like C got obviously the most, and with plenty of support both for A and B as well. Okay, this one is a little bit different, and I'm going to pause just for a second and ask Terry, do you want to speak to this one briefly, and then we'll review it with them so they understand where this one's coming from. We put this one last intentionally.
Thank you. You may have noticed in a number of these that people are talking about also the process, the consensus building, the coalition building. This last prompt was focused on that. The others are focused on what we need to do. This last one is focused on how we need to do it, talking about three things of building common goals and developing stories that connect to different audiences and then removing barriers for participation. So I think the correct answer is probably all of the above, but we'll vote.
Again, all these will move forward. It's just which would you like to see emphasized? And again, this is sort of a little different. Instead of the what, it's the what's next. That's why we had it go last. So this one, A, building a network to various audiences with a common goal, a diverse community of businesses, marginalized communities, local leaders, inclusive of everyone. B, framing issues differently when engaging different audiences, learning to speak their language, homeowners association, communities, education on climate communication. C, removing barriers to meaningful public participation. Okay, so you're going back to the A?
Trying.
Because that was B. There were 3 of them? Okay, so there are 3 of them. This is A. And B. And C. And again, as Terry noted, you'll probably want to do all 3 of them, but is there one in particular that you'd like to see emphasized? And we'll open the poll. And this is your last one of the pollings. Okay, maybe a few more. All right. If not, clearly A is one you'd like to see emphasized, and again, all of these will move forward. Again, the point of this exercise was to allow you a chance to see what other groups were looking at and thinking and prioritizing as well, and I appreciate your patience in making this one happen and giving us sort of an extra sense of the full plenary group's sense of what should be emphasized next. And I think at this point, I'm turning it back over to you, Greg. Oh, you want to go up there?
Well, I want to thank Hal and Raphael for leading us through that exercise. I think they gave us something to think about, right? We'd like to now start kind of closing up the event today. And to close out the event, I want to introduce Eileen Connolly-Kiesler. She's president and CEO of the Collier Community Foundation. And Collier Community Foundation is one of our sponsors today, our Transformer sponsors, as a matter of fact. Eileen oversees the Foundation's mission and addresses community needs by providing leadership and coordination through grant making and fund development. She also serves on the boards of the Florida Nonprofit Alliance, the Greater Naples Chamber of Commerce, Community Foundations Leading Change, Imagine Solutions, and the Estate Planning Council. Please join me in welcoming Eileen to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I begin, I was handed this lovely book. There's a group out in the lobby called Crew, and some of you may have filled out this little red ticket, and the winner of this lovely book is Katie Westner. So, is Katie here? Okay. Well, she's going to get a book when we track her down. So thank you. I'm Eileen Connolly-Kiesler, President and CEO of the Collier Community Foundation, and on behalf of the Community Foundation and the Collaboratory, we have been honored to support this summit and be part and engaged in this conversation. Supporting environmental issues certainly is not new for our Community Foundation. Our foundation was one of the first members and funders of Growing Climate Solution. I'm hoping that all of you have signed up to be members of Growing Climate Solutions, but if not, please make sure you speak with Anna and do that today. Our foundation has granted over $3.1 million in environmental efforts in the last 2 years. Obviously, a big one was planting trees with the Botanical Garden, and thank you for that partnership, Donna. Also, Climate Solutions, funding the Conservancy, Corkscrew, Audubon of Western Everglades, Keep Collier Beautiful, and that's just to name a few of who we've partnered with. And as our communities have seen firsthand the disastrous effects of red tide, wildfires, blue-green algae, and hurricanes, the Community Foundation has put together their disaster fund so that we could help to address the issues that were affecting our community. So once you're through the disaster, those first few weeks of a hurricane, we really start looking at repairing and rebuilding. And I know today you heard 3 times, do not do trailers, do not do trailers, do not do trailers. However, in Collier County, we have 79 trailer courts. 47 of them are in flood zones in Collier County, so we have to do trailers. And so the Community Foundation right now is in the process of their first 4 trailers that we'll be purchasing and lifting to get them to be able to meet the codes they need to meet to be in those flood zones. We also are working carefully with Everglades City After Irma hit 5 years ago, we were able to lift 2 homes in Everglades City. Needless to say, they were not touched. It was a beautiful thing. And we are going back into Everglades City, hoping to lift somewhere between 5 to 10 homes in these next couple years. Again, as you saw today, resilience is important, and getting things off the ground here is a must if you're going to continue to live in those areas that are low. So we are going to continue to work on that. We will stay committed to protecting our unique ecosystem here in Southwest Florida. I thank you so much for joining us today, and I want to thank the speakers again who have done an amazing job. Hopefully you're going to leave here today with some energy and excitement about what we can do around environmental issues, and we will all be here to partner together. So thank you. And Charlotte will be next. I think they're going to read her bio.
We'd like to introduce Charlotte Roman. Charlotte was appointed by Governor Ron DeSantis in 2019 and serves as an at-large member of the South Florida Water Management District Governing Board and the chair of the Big Cypress Basin Board. Ms. Romaine enlisted the U.S. Army in 1973 and served for 26 years, retiring as a colonel. Highlights of her career include command of an airborne signal battalion at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and service as an inspector general, and commanded of the U.S. garrison Fort Gordon, Georgia. More recently, she served on the City of Marcos City Island Council. She is certified Florida Master Naturalist and has volunteered more than 1,000 hours for the Rookery Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve. In 2022, she received the Laverne Norris Gaynor Environmental Champion Award by the Rookery Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve Board of Directors for her work in protecting the coastal environment. Let's give her a welcome.
Thank you. Well, I know your time is precious, so I thought I'd save a few by getting up here early, and I appreciate that kind introduction. It's great to be with you this afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this conference. I'm Charlotte Roman. I'm on the governing board of the South Florida Water Management District, and the district is the state agency that's responsible for implementing Everglades restoration and managing the water resources for all of South Florida and 9 million residents. I am the at-large member on the board for the Lower West, North Central region that covers 10 counties. That includes Charlotte, Lee, Collier, Hendry, Highlands, Glades, Okeechobee, Orange, Osceola, and Polk counties. So that's a big area that I cover, and with the momentum that we have with Everglades restoration right now and all of the issues with our water, I stay on the road quite a bit. My time since the military has been dedicated towards protecting our natural environment. And as a Florida Master Naturalist, I've spent countless hours learning about our complex ecosystem and the critters that live there. In fact, one of the opportunities that I had was to work with Dr. Mike Savarese and Dr. Peter Shen on the urban resiliency team when they were developing the ACUNE model. And I'm certainly honored to serve on the governing board of the South Florida Water Management District as we work to restore America's Everglades and protect our water resources. I appreciate all of you being here today to talk about resilience and climate. You may remember that exactly 4 years ago, Governor DeSantis signed Executive Order 1912 to protect Florida's environment. Just last week, the governor signed a new Executive Order, 2306, and this executive order is even more ambitious, asking for $3.5 billion to help Everglades restoration and protection of our water resources. The district fully supports these efforts, and we're engaged at every level, and we're hopeful that the legislature will respond accordingly as it funds these programs and makes these decisions in the coming session. Under the leadership of Governor DeSantis, the governing board has made tremendous advancements. We have either broken ground, reached a major milestone, or completed construction on over 50 projects in the last 4 years. Quite a change in the pace that we're setting here for Everglades restoration. I'd like to touch on a couple of projects. We are making progress on the Caloosahatchee Reservoir. That's often referred to as the C-43 Reservoir. It's on our coast, and it will store 170,000 acre-feet of water, which is about 55 billion gallons of water. The staff gave me a good tool here to share how much water that is. That's roughly 200 Empire State Buildings full of water. Quite a lot of water, and that's currently under construction as I speak. Work also continues on the Picayune Strand Restoration Project. That's in our backyard here at Collier County. That project goal is to improve the flows of water into Collier Seminole State Park, the 10,000 Island National Wildlife Refuge, and the Rookery Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve. Crews are actively removing the roads, plugging canals, and restoring that system. As the hydrology is restored, the habitat will come back, and so will the wildlife. And I also want to mention the Everglades Agricultural Area Reservoir. That's not in Southwest Florida, but it's critical to Everglades restoration. The district has been constructing the stormwater treatment area. That project is ahead of schedule, and it's set to be completed by the end of this year, which is very exciting. And the Army Corps of Engineers is about ready to break ground on the reservoir portion of that project. And why Everglades restoration? It not only benefits the environment, but it also benefits our communities. Restoring the Everglades is one giant resiliency project. With over 60 components, the Everglades Restoration Plan to move more water south serves as a green infrastructure roadmap for the nation. Every day, the Water Management District is working hard to bring more Everglades projects online, and I truly am committed to that effort. Last year, we experienced a devastating hurricane, Hurricane Ian, and some of our communities were absolutely decimated. The district has responsibility for the water infrastructure to move that water from our communities. And the district team is totally committed in making sure our infrastructure can bounce back quickly after those storms. Dr. Carolina Moran, who you heard from this morning, is our Chief Resiliency Officer, and she's working on infrastructure adaptation for all of those systems that you see around the southern part of the state. In closing, Florida is at the epicenter in the need for resiliency, and we've got broad support across the state. Now is the time. As you leave this conference today, today is the time for action. These conferences are great on brainstorming, bringing people together, sharing ideas, but I can't help but think that a larger part of our community outside of this room has no idea what we're talking about. So it's extremely important that after today, that you take the message and make maybe one convert or raise someone's awareness, one person. If we each take one person, I think we'll be further along. Thank you again for having me here today, and so proud of the effort today and the great conversations. Thank you.
And to officially close our program today, please join me in inviting Rob Moyer, President and CEO of the Conservancy of Southwest Florida, to the stage. Rob has more than 25 years of experience in local, regional, and international conservation. Moyer's key focus is to build upon Conservancy's outstanding 58-year history in Southwest Florida with a keen eye on the future environmental challenges. He believes in collaborative and science-based approaches in order to balance economic growth with environmental conservation. Come on, welcome Rob.
Okay, I'll keep this short. You've all been very patient as we've gone through today, but I have a few closing thoughts that the organizers asked me to sort of touch on as we wrap up here. First thing I'd like to say is we believe that never let a crisis go to waste, right? This hurricane is a wake-up call, and we've got a limited window of time to do something with it. When the core group that has organized this incredible endeavor today, and I just want to give a shout out to them, you all know who you are, but they've been relentless for a year and a half. I think Greg actually, Greg and I started talking about this almost 2 years ago, but this group of 10 people, you know, the conference was supposed to be October 6th, and it was supposed to be at the Hyatt. Well, you know, the Hyatt is now closed, or maybe is just reopening because of the impact of Hurricane Ian. This idea that we can segregate the environment over here, human health over here, the economy over here, and our quality of life in another corner is just a myth. And we see that with the impacts of these storms. And so this is really a crisis that can be used as an opportunity, and I really do believe that. I also really do believe that nature is our best defense. I really, truly believe, and many of you heard today, that yes, we need engineering. Yes, we're going to need some of those engineering solutions and hardening and pumps. Yes, that will be required. But we've got assets on this coast which are unique and unparalleled anywhere in the world. We've got incredible strands of mangrove forests. We have an amazing amount of wetlands still intact, and we have some very significant uplands. But all three of those critical systems are under threat today. And the Conservancy of Southwest Florida is fighting every day to protect water, land, and wildlife, particularly through the preservation of wetlands, through controlling the way we grow into our eastern lands, and by protecting all those mangroves that really do us a great service when these storms come upon us. Now, we know that Margaret Mead often said, once said, that never doubt that a small group of people can change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has. You know, it was a small group of people that came up with the idea for today, but then the group grew bigger and bigger. So I want to really thank all of you for taking the time. I know it's a busy time to be here today. I want to thank Priority Marketing. They've done a great job. All these great visuals, you know, all the reminders that you got to where to park and what you're going to have for lunch, right? That was all Priority. So Nikki, thank you. Nikki's in the back there. She deserves a huge round of applause. Greg stole some of my thunder, but we would not be here without Dr. Anna Pushkin-Shevlin. All right, the harasser-in-chief. In the most kind and honest way, but Anna, who's at the back there and who has been with us with Growing Climate Solutions for years, has really been the glue, as Greg said. So just we're so grateful for Anna's leadership here. An idea, a group, a commitment, that's what equals change. And so the road ahead is one that we are looking for your input on. There's going to be a very important survey that we're going to ask all of you to take when you leave this room. And that's very important because you'll see the scan there. So take a picture of that. Right now, everyone get their cell phones out. Do not leave this room without filling out this survey. How many questions are they, Anna? Only less than 10 questions. We can all do this. But we really do value your input and your feedback, and it is so important. Also, a quick reminder, do not leave those beautiful Hertz reusable drinking cups on the table. Take them with you. They're for you. They have been donated by Hertz, our lead sponsor. And again, I just want to thank all the sponsors. Hertz, where's our team from Hertz right here? Thank you so much, Katie, for stepping up. She said yes very early. And Greg, I just want to acknowledge Greg Tully. He's really been a driving force behind this, Greg. So just thanks for being here, and Mike Savarese and everyone else that's worked so hard on this conference. So the road doesn't stop here. This is an initiative. Hopefully the summit is just one step on the initiative, because as you heard today, there's a lot of work to be done. I think figuring out the how is critical, and your input will help drive that. So as many speakers said, it doesn't matter which group you choose to become involved in. Just choose one and do something. And I'm so inspired by Charlotte Roman. I mean, isn't she a wonderful example of an elected leader, an appointed leader? I mean, where's Charlotte sitting? Where is she? Okay. Charlotte, to me, just demonstrates that commitment and that drive and that passion. You just hear it in her voice. It's hard to not be motivated when you have leaders making the big decisions at the top, but they need all of us. And I think, Charlotte, I can speak for you too on this, that you need engaged, active citizens and groups to continue this journey together. So I hope you enjoy this. I hope you found it rewarding. And take the survey. Enjoy the day. Go and enjoy this beautiful day that we've been blessed here in Southwest Florida to have. And remember this one thing. Let's not take for granted this beautiful paradise we all live in. We have to fight to protect it. Thank you, and have a great day.